Welcome back to the lesson. Let us resume from where we had left off. So, Hamel blames the parents and the teachers for the children not being serious about their studies, and then he goes on to praise the French language as the most beautiful language of the world. Hamel said that French was the clearest and the most logical language, and that people must guard their language and never forget it. When people are enslaved, their mother tongue, their language, acts as a key to their prison. So, this was told in the context of the Franco Prussian War, since Prussians had captured Alsace and Lorraine. They wanted to enslave the Frenchmen living in Alsace, and that is why Hamel was sent out of the school. French language was stopped being taught in the school, and German was supposed to be taught instead. So, Hamel says that to Frenchmen, the language is very precious, and that the French people should guard their language. They should never give up their mother tongue for any other language for that matter, and their language would save them against slavery from against slavery under the Prussians. So Hamel then opened the lesson and read out to them. It was a lesson in grammar, and I quote, Franz was amazed to see how well he understood it. He said that it seemed very easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. So, Hamel gave a very beautiful explanation of the grammar lesson, and Franz, who used to dislike the subject, realized that it was actually not that bad a subject at all. He also enjoyed the lesson very much. And Hamel was so dedicated towards that lesson that it seemed that Hamel wanted to give his everything through that one lesson, that lesson which was supposed to be his last French lesson. So after the grammar, they had a lesson in writing, and I quote, that day M. Hamel had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand. France Alsace, France Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish books as if that was French too. So, Hamel gave them some work in writing, and everyone wrote silently together. They wrote unitedly, they sat together, and they dedicated themselves towards the language, their mother tongue, French. So a sense of patriotism prevailed in the classroom, and they wrote for the love of their mother tongue. Even the little ones who were tracing just images from their tracing books, from their drawing books, they also did their work so dedicatedly as if that was also a lesson in French. So the only sound that could be heard was that of the scratching of the pen on the paper, and pigeons cooed on the roof of the class. Franz wondered, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? So, the Prussians had taken over Alsace, and German was to be taught in the school from the next day. So, Franz thought that just as the Prussians were taking away their natural language, their mother tongue from them by not allowing them to read or write in French and imposing German on them. So, similarly, would the Prussians even force the pigeons to coo, to make the sound in their language, to make the sound in the German language? So, Franz over here gives us a very subtle comparison between a man and a pigeon. A Frenchman, to him, the language French is as natural as the coo to that of a pigeon. A coo to the pigeon is a natural sound. Similarly, French to a Frenchman is a natural language. It is the mother tongue. So that is why Franz wondered that if it is possible for the Prussians to take away the language from them, would they even take away the language from the pigeons? M. Hamel, while all this was going on in the class, while the class silently did its work, Hamel, he was sitting in his chair and he was looking around the classroom. He was trying to fix his mind on just everything around, and he was trying to get, rather capture a visual image of every object, every item in the classroom, the chairs, the desks, the garden outside, the trees that he planted there. He wanted to get a image. He wanted to get an image of everything that was around him, because the classroom where he had served for 40 years, the school to which he had given his valuable service for 40 years, for the sake of that school, he had to leave. But he left without any complaints, and just above the classroom, the students, Hamel heard every lesson to the very last. Old Hauser also spelled the letters emotionally. It was a memorable day. So, Franz, Hamel, Hauser, all other village people, it was a day, it was rather the last day they could cherish their language for the last time freely, in with freedom, because from the following day they would not be free to even speak in their mother tongue. And it was a very, very emotionally charged day at school for everybody, and tears rolled down Hauser's eyes when he tried to pronounce his letters. And while all this was going on, suddenly the church clock struck 12, and the trumpet of the Prussians sounded, and they returned from their drill. So the Prussian soldiers, they returned from their practice, and it was also the end of the school that day. It was also the end of Hamel's last French class. So Hamel rose up to address the class, but he choked. I quote, "My friends," said he, "I I, but something choked him. He could not go on. Then he turned to the blackboard and he took a piece of chalk and wrote on the board, Vive la France, which means long live France. And he wrote it as big as he could. And then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall. So it was a very difficult moment for for Hamel. So after writing the phrase, he rested his head on the wall itself, and after that he made a gesture with his hand to the students, asking them to leave. That was, that is, school was dismissed. You may go. So this moment when Hamel had to end his last French lesson was a tragic one. Hamel felt a lot of pain in dismissing the class, and he obviously was very, very upset at having to leave the school, which was like a home to him, to which he had given 40 years of his life away, and he had to give up his language to foreigners. So it was a very, very difficult moment for both Hamel and Franz and all the other village people who had gathered to listen to the last French lesson of Hamel. So, with this, we come to the end of the lesson. Now, let us discuss some important themes that we find in this lesson. So, the important themes are significance of one's own language in one's life for existence, importance of education, and to learn one's own language. National language of a country binds its citizens into one, and linguistic chauvinism. What is the meaning of this term? This term means pride in believing that one's language is the most supreme and having a disregard for other languages. In this case, it was the Prussians who would impose German language on the French people and force them to learn the language which was not their mother tongue. So these are a few themes that you must remember. Coming to the characters, we have two major characters in this lesson. The first one is obviously the teacher, M. Hamel. So M. Hamel was the school master of a small village school in the French region of Alsace-Lorraine, and he has been teaching the school for 40 years. He carries his ruler and he has this image of being very strict, and on the last day of his school he wore his finest clothes. He was calm, he was kind, he did not scold anyone, he grew sentimental, and he asked everyone to love their language, to protect their language, and he dedicatedly taught everyone on that last day. The next character is Franz, the little boy, who did not have any respect for his own language not until the last day of Hamel's lesson, when he realized the importance of his own language when it was actually being taken away from him. He realized how important one's mother tongue is to themselves. So, Franz comes to a new appreciation of his education. However, when Prussian authorities who have occupied his home announce that school will no longer teach French but German. So, upon hearing this news, Franz feels a great sense of remorse and regrets not taking his French education more seriously while he still had the chance. So, Franz actually he regrets, he becomes penitent, he is repentant for not giving due importance to his own language. So, this is a quotation by Franz. My last lesson, why? I hardly knew how to write. I should have never, I should never learn any more. That is, he's regretting the fact that he lost the chance, the opportunity of learning his language anymore. So, with this, we come to the end of the lesson. Thank you for listening and see you in the next video.